and this is something I actually learned from my students, that if somebody's asking for help, they probably need it. Otherwise, they wouldn't ask, because for a lot of those people, especially my students, to ask a professor for help, that's a lot of effort. Like it's literally like killing them to ask me for help, because I don't know why, but the perceived power differential, right? So if people ask you for help, maybe just give it to them graciously.
This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Gaming. I'm Drew Dixon. I'm one of your hosts and the chief content nerd at Love Thy Nerd. I'm joined by Chris Gwaltney. Hey, Chris.
Hey, I'm here, and you're listening to Humans of Gaming. And with this show, we like to talk to our developer friends and our content creators and just people that work in the games industry and hear what makes them tick. You know, there's this temptation, especially for creative types, to find their identity in the thing they've made and not in who they actually are. And we try to combat that and get to hear about what makes people actually really tick. So welcome.
Yeah, these are super fun conversations. I always enjoy them because we talk to such amazingly creative people. You wouldn't know it sometimes from because these people's names are not always like household names, but they're incredibly accomplished, have done amazing things. That like the person we talked to today has designed so many stinking games.
Lots.
And has helped other people develop so many games. I mean, I'm trying to think of someone we've had that's more prolific really in their design than Sen, and it's hard to think of. Rob Davio maybe, but yeah, Sen has Sen-Foong Lim, and I think on the podcast he pronounces his name. I feel like I didn't do it correctly, but he said he was very forgiving of people.
You did a great
not
job.
saying it correct. Because we just can't make some of those noises if you haven't been trained to. So that's just how language works. So my apologies for not doing that well. But yeah, he made Junk Art and what else? Kingdom Rush.
Belfort.
Yeah, he's involved in a whole bunch of other games.
Like IPs, like well-known IPs like Godfather and I forget some of the other ones, but yeah, I mean, just
Batman animated series game.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you just go to Board Game Geek and, you know, type in his name, like you're going to see a laundry list of games that he's been involved with. And yeah, he also
Scooby-Doo.
like he seems to be one of those guys, and he talks about this a little bit, how just whatever he kind of puts his mind to, he does and does like excellently. And he also strikes me as one of those people that I just want to ask, like, do you sleep? Because you seem to do a lot of stuff. He's also a therapist, and yeah, he's just kind of done all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah. If you need some parenting advice, we get into that towards the end of the podcast.
We get a little bit of a free therapy session towards the end.
where Sen helped me out a little bit with some of my own struggles and issues as a parent of 3 kids.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't invoice us.
He's great. Yeah. So anyway, we did a panel with Sen that April Lynn led at Gen Con Online this last year. So go look that up if you can. I don't know if you can find it online, but search for it. Maybe you can. And who knows? There's lots of stuff on the internet. But yeah, he's a super thoughtful guy, super thoughtful designer. And I really enjoyed getting to know him better and hearing his stories. So without further ado, we very much hope you enjoy this conversation with Sen. Sen, remind me how to say your name.
Oh,
I know how to say
Sen,
Sen, but
Sen.
The other part.
It's Foong.
Okay.
But I mean, so
Foong. That's
it's
not so
funny
hard.
because I was just writing this last night at 4 a.m. that it's actually because that's how late I go to bed. It's actually not even that. Like, that's not even how you really pronounce it. And I was talking with a bunch of other Asian creatives about, have you ever had to anglicize your name? I said, yeah, my entire life. That's exactly what happened. I didn't pick an English name like a lot of other people have, like my son's like Ethan,
Yeah.
my other son's Eli, but they're also not all fully Chinese. But
Did you name them that, or that was what they
oh,
chose?
no, they were named that. Like, so they have a
Oh,
Chinese
okay.
middle name and they have an Anglophone first name, I guess. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it was just funny that just came up last night, about, how do you pronounce your name and do you simplify it for, other people? It's like, yep, that's been my life. My entire life has always been simplifying my name. And it's not a bad thing. It's just so
You don't get annoyed by
no,
it too
well,
much.
because it's a unreasonable request to ask you to say my name in the way it's supposed to be said, because you can't
Yeah.
actually make the sounds. Like, there's no
Right.
human way that you can make the sound right off the bat anyway. I mean, you can totally practice.
Take
Oh, it
some
takes a lot of
practice.
practice. But it's
Yeah.
like, so babies, I don't know if you know this, this is just science, right? But babies up to about six months of age can actually hear the difference between like all the phonemes in the world. And then at around that age of 6 months, that starts fading away. So it's this like superpower that
Mm.
they have. And as they get exposed to more and more of the core language that they'll be exposed to, they lose the ability to recognize the other stuff.
Mm. I feel like that's a metaphor for like
It
all
kind
of
of
life, that
probably
we start out like super powered and then we perpetually get
Yeah.
Just
worse.
eventually get worse. That's definitely the story of
Yeah.
my life. I'll tell you that right
Or at least
now.
you're open to new things, right?
Yeah.
And then you perpetually get a little more closed and closed and closed.
Just more and
Mm.
more salty as the days
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah.
2020
Yeah.
didn't
Oh
help
God,
with
no.
that. That's for sure.
Super salty.
Yeah. It's really sad. So, Sen, you've designed some games. That's why we had you on this
That's the word on the
podcast.
Nice year
street.
that I've done that.
That's the word on Board Game
Yeah.
Geek.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think probably most people might know you for designing junk art, or
I guess
but
so.
what is you've done some other games too, and you're working on Kingdom Rush right now, I believe,
Mhm.
and you've done Mind Management.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. Give us a quick overview
Oh,
of
you
your
got to
work in
settle
game design.
this. I was
Oh,
asking
yeah.
Drew earlier. So would you say, is it mind management or is it like mind MGMT? Is it mind like what's the
Well, Matt, who created it, calls it mind management. So I just listen to Matt. Whatever
Okay.
Matt says is go. Now the funny thing about that is that Matt often contradicts himself. So that's a whole other Matt story. But yeah, Matt Kint is the writer, artist, and creator of that series of comics, and he's a good friend of mine. So we figured, let's make a game together, and that's what we made. But it is mind management. I mean, for my ludology, my ludography, whatever you want to call it.
That's a strong word. I like it.
I know, right?
Ludography.
Ludography, yeah.
Do lots of board game designers like use that term, or did you come up with that?
I constantly introducing it to other people, so I
That's
think I
great.
might be the one who started. I don't know. But I also believe that I started a whole lot of stuff that really I probably didn't. So that's just me
Yeah.
being egotistical. The
I mean, that'd be a pretty sweet thing to put on your resume. You have a whole section that's like my ludography, you know?
well, I do that actually. That is what I call it on my my whatever my web page about myself.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call that. I made it because everybody kept asking me for it. It's like, I don't want to do this, but it's
Mhm.
easier than me retyping it every time.
Mhm.
So now I just send them to this website that has all the games that I've ever made. Well, actually, it doesn't even have all the games that I've ever made. It has like the covers of maybe a select like 20
The
or
ones that you
30
want
of
to
them.
admit to.
Well, I mean, no, not even that. They're even just ones that present well in terms of like
Yeah.
they visually kind of pop off the page and stuff like that.
yeah.
And it's a wide variety. And a lot of the stuff that I do is intellectual property work. So those are particularly, interesting for people who aren't in the industry to see. It's like, oh, you made a Batman game. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
And that's usually where I get a lot of requests is from people who are licensing their IP to somebody else. And so they're looking for a designer. And it sort of behooves me to show them, oh, I've done work in some of the biggest intellectual properties in the world and some of the
Yeah.
smallest. So
WWE,
yeah,
The
right.
Shining.
Yeah, if you like wrestling, I also like
We
wrestling.
like that wrestling. I made some
Oh man,
games.
yeah, no,
we have
I
a
love
wrestling
wrestling.
podcast.
We
Do you
have a
really?
wrestling
Nerd, so,
podcast.
yeah, we do.
Not Drew and I, but LTN.
Not me. Yeah,
Oh yeah. I just on the network. That's great.
I did when I was, gosh, probably like a freshman in high school. Had like a backyard wrestling league thing
Oh, did you?
that I was in. Yeah, for
That's
real.
awesome. Do you have
I
like?
say a league. It was
Do you
really
have
just
like
me and some
videos
friends.
of that?
Somebody does. Yeah, somebody
Somebody
does
somewhere.
somewhere.
Dude, I
That's
would
awesome.
I'd pay dozens of dollars for those.
Maybe even
videos.
Yeah.
tens of dozens.
Mm.
No,
There,
that's too
yeah.
much.
There was a
Not
ketchup
get ahead of
involved, you know.
Seriously? Like you're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna cut myself. It's ketchup.
We would like there was a
Blade.
couple times where we videoed like breaking a bottle and then you'd come out with ketchup on your face, you know. Like as if you broke a bottle over your head or whatever.
Oh, hilarious! And you like edited it all in.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh my god.
It was we all had
Oh.
like multiple alter, egos. We would have like our main character and then we would have like another character that wore a mask or something. So
Right,
we
and
could
then
have
later
multiple.
they'd be somebody else because you need enough people
Yeah.
to make the roster look good.
Right, yeah, and having multiple ones would make it like because we'd all want to be the one that won each match. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so if you have alternate egos that are wearing masks, it's easier to be like, oh, I don't care if this character loses a bunch.
So who was your favorite character to be, and what was their finishing move? We need to know this.
Yeah,
Now we need to get Drew
my,
onto our wrestling podcast as a special guest.
There you
my
go.
main character was called Magic Man.
Okay.
That was my
All
main
right.
one.
All right.
Yeah,
Alright,
and that
alright,
was I
alright.
think that was like no mask if I remember right. I don't remember.
Now, were you
my
a
finishing
heel
move.
or
It's
were
kinda
you
sad.
the what's
Were
the
you a
term
face?
they use? Yeah, the
Face.
face. There you go.
I was the face.
Of course you
Of
were.
course you were. It's
Yeah.
name like Magic Man. Of course you
Magic
were.
Man.
I mean,
Oh
I
man,
was
like
pretty good looking.
was
back
your
then,
was your
too,
was your
so-
finisher called like abracadabra?
Hocus Pocus.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And he's going off the top turnbuckle with the hocus pocus.
Yeah, but anyway, back to back to your
board
working games.
Hey,
Yeah.
so I actually played Junk Art like
Oh, good.
probably a couple years ago or so now, and I have to admit, like I'm terrible at those kinds of games. Like I don't have that kind of abstract creativity or that whatever that bone is in my body doesn't exist. Like tile laying games,
it's
I'm
a wrist
garbage.
bone.
Like
It's a wrist
any
bone.
of that kind of stuff I'm just not good at. Because I'm not good at them, I don't enjoy them.
Right.
Because if I can't win something, I don't want to participate in it. That's just,
No,
that's
a
my
lot
sin
of
when I'm
people are
working
like
on it,
that.
okay?
A lot of
One of the
people.
problems with
Yeah,
Chris
it's
as a
just
human
one of
being.
it's just one of my core issues. But I have to say, like, I actually still think about Junk Art and my experience playing it, like, actually fondly. Like, I really liked it.
Oh, that's
And I
interesting.
don't actually tend to like those kinds of games.
Well,
So you did
it's this-
something right.
It's this weird mix, right? So there's a huge, long story behind Junk Art.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is that when we finished it, it became this thing where it was like the dexterity game that gamers can also enjoy. That's what it became known as in hobby circles, right? Because it's got this little bit of strategy to it with the card play. It does have that spatial awareness and dexterity, but the combination of all of this stuff allowed people to kind of at least express their own gameplay desires through it, as opposed to, yeah, this is just a stacking game. Because
Yeah.
some people are like, I don't care about stacking games, but this one allowed you to score points in different ways. Allowed you to, you're not eliminated. When your tower falls, that's
Mhm.
now counting against you a little bit, but
Mhm.
you're not eliminated, right? So there's a lot to it that I think people really gravitated towards. So I don't know if it's like our biggest selling game. I think it is. Like I have a whole condominium that says it is. That kind of thing. Like that's not a brag. That's just like what
Yeah.
I don't know how to judge how popular the games are, because
Yeah.
BGG is one thing, but then, you know, what I get in residuals is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have some very highly rated games. We have some very low rated games because, you know, not everything's a winner, baby. And then
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle, there's those games that do both, where it's like highly rated and sells a lot and is critically acclaimed and is all these things. And Junk Art just happened to be one of those things. Now, we're hoping for, you know, even more things to come with Junk Art. It's, you know, every game designer wants what's called an evergreen, a game that just kind of
Yeah.
is always being reprinted, and you know everybody buys a copy at least once in their life, maybe gives a couple away as a gift, and that's what we hope Junk Art can be. And we'll see. I mean, it has definitely been that over the last couple of years. It's just, will it continue to be evergreen? The idea behind it is solid, and you know there's a lot of people who really like it, to the point where, you know, it's been out for years and people
Yeah.
still
It was
send
like
me pictures.
2016 or something, right?
uh yeah, probably. Let me think. Yeah, probably around then. So about 4 or 5 years, and it's still like people still send me pictures on a regular basis. Oh, look what we made in Junk Art. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome, because it is.
Yeah.
It's just really awesome to see people do cool things.
It definitely has those legs. Like it's is it in retail anywhere like Target or Barnes and Noble? Because like I could totally see it on a
Uh,
shelf at one of those places and people just picking that up literally based
so
on what it looks like, you know?
so there were always sort of hopes, and I think the newest iteration, so like the third edition, I think is
Mm-hmm.
what the company has finally kind of settled. That's what we're going to push. So the original version was like in this big wooden box. It was like the heirloom version where you'd like pass it down for many generations type thing, because it was
Yeah.
like beautiful and expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So that wooden box adds like a really big kind of ask for
Mm-hmm.
purchasers, right? It's like, okay, you're going to spend X number of dollars, and if you did the math, Y number of dollars of that X is just for the box, right?
Yeah.
Because it's this
Yeah.
big wooden box that increases the cost, increases the shipping,
Yep.
increases the weight, all this kind of stuff. And so the next version that came out, there was actually a plastic version of Junk Art. And it was weird because they actually had to scale the pieces down to get it to a price point that they liked.
Mm-hmm.
But it took off like a good 20 US off the MSRP. And so it was like, yeah,
That's
let's look at
huge.
this. But the problem with that is that people still wanted wood, which I find hilarious in some ways, because the plastic is actually molded perfectly. And the wood, no matter what your tolerances are, you're not going to get perfect pieces
Mm-hmm.
every time. Which is neat in some ways. So each person who owns Junk Art, there's something unique about their set,
Mm.
that if you play it enough, you'll get to learn those little nuances. Like, don't pick the green one of the big cylinder because it's kind of slightly off in angle. And that's
Yeah.
just machining, right? But once you mold it in plastic, it's perfect every time. And they came up with actually a texture for it that was not slippery, because obviously you think plastic on plastic, it's going to slide. In a dexterity game, that's not good. But they have this kind of like, it's not gritty or grippy, but it doesn't slide as much.
Yeah.
And so it's actually for tournament. If you wanted to do a tournament play, like, and everything is equal and perfect and all that kind of stuff, that would probably be what I would say. Yeah, do it with that. But the problem is that in hobby, anyways, a lot of people expect wood. They like wood, unless it's
Mm-hmm.
like fancy miniature plastic. They're like,
Mhm.
no, it's got to be wood. I like the feel of wood. I want that heft, and that's true. I mean, the weight of the wood is definitely different than the weight of the plastic. Because the plastic is like, I think, like 18% smaller. There's some actual number, I can't remember what it is, and so anyway, the plastic version didn't perform super well, as well as expected, because we expected it to be like, you know, like you said, Target, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, whatever.
Mhm.
Hey, let's put this in there, sell like gangbusters, it'll be great. But again, I think people just didn't love the plastic. They were used to like Jenga, right? Being
Yeah,
wood. They
yeah,
were
yeah.
used to like that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, I'm a collector of Jenga specifically. I have like 18 or 19 different versions in my basement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love Jenga. Jenga's
Oh.
like a perfect product in my mind.
Wow.
Yeah. I just think it's amazing.
I love Jenga, man. Like I'm about it.
Yeah.
Not
The
about it to the tune of having 18 or 19 different versions of it, but
Yeah. Well, so I played Dread a lot, the role playing game, which uses Jenga towers.
oh, that's
And
right. I've
so a
heard of
lot
that.
of the people that I play with are really good at Jenga now. And so we just kind of let's do Jenga Extreme today because it like will mess you up more. You'll die
That's
more. Or, if we're playing like a cyberpunk type thing, it's like, oh, let's use the Jenga that's a Tetris version, which has like angles and stuff. So, and some of those are plastic too. Actually, quite a few of them have like plastic parts. But for this one anyway, the next version, the third version, is going to be wooden parts in a cardboard box instead of wooden in a wooden box, or
Mm.
plastic in a cardboard box. It's going to be wooden in a
Hey,
plastic
third
box.
time's a charm.
Yeah, and I think so. That's just learning and growth and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And like the market will bear what the market will bear, and we're hoping that the market will bear this one
Yeah.
to the tune of how they supported the first version, because it'll have all the feels with much less cost. And I mean, obviously, just like Jenga, I'm pretty sure if you go look at your Jenga, if you didn't have like Jenga Extreme or something that's actually stored inside a plastic case, you probably have taped that Jenga box like hundreds of times, or have
Oh,
gotten rid of it and put it in a
I've
bucket,
never seen a Jenga box intact
right?
ever.
And it's actually why they changed it from the original box, which was a box that had this fold out that you could actually use to guide, reset your
Mhm.
tower square, which is
Mhm.
awesome. And then it just became this bucket that you threw your parts back in at the end.
Yeah. Just give up.
Yeah, Jenga was
Yeah.
perfect. Like the original Jenga was perfect because you could use that
A
box.
Jenga apologist. I never thought I'd see the day.
I know. You could use that box to like square your tower. You could, when you were repackaging it, when you're putting it away, you're actually setting it up for the next time you play.
It's wild.
That's right.
Oh
It's
my
genius.
gosh. It was genius.
Are there like a lot of board gamers that crap on Jenga?
Of course. Just like
I'm
they
sure
crap
there
on
are.
Munchkin, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
or
God,
like.
yeah. I mean, hey, I'm guilty of crapping
Oh
on
yeah,
Munchkin,
yeah. I mean,
but,
I'm sure at some point in my life I've crapped on Munchkin. My kids love Munchkin, and I hate playing Munchkin. But that's the thing. So I'm not going to say I like Munchkin. I'm going to say Munchkin is another example of a product that does what it's supposed to do, which is provide. And this is my theory of game design. And Eric Lang and I have talked about this a lot. Is if a product can consistently provide the experience that it's supposed to, that's like what's written on the box, it is good. No matter what you think about the game itself, it is still a good product for its audience. That's the thing.
right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if like, we just talked about wrestling. Like, how many people do we know that kind of roll their eyes when you say, "Oh, I like wrestling"? They're like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
But it provides exactly what I want every time I watch it. So I don't care.
Yep.
I'm a college professor. I still watch wrestling.
I had
bother
that. I
me.
had an
love
argument
it.
one time. Well, a debate, a heated discussion
Heated discussion.
with someone one time about Britney Spears and whether or not her music was art. And he was very strongly like, yeah, it's not art. It's just crap music, yada yada. And I was kind of coming at it from this angle that you guys are talking about, where it's like, you know what, like I mean, as cliche as it is, like this eye, it's in the eye of the beholder kind of idea, right? Like if it's hitting the people that it's supposed to be hitting and they're enjoying it and it's good and fulfilling, then cool, it's doing what it's doing. And again, here's another Chris issue. We're just going to air all my issues today.
It's the venting of Chris issues.
It's because at my core, I want to be a gatekeeper. I want to tell people these are the games that are good and these are the games that are bad, objectively, whether you believe it or not. This is truth.
I think we all do.
So this is a moment of growth for you, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So like that's something that I'm trying, like Monopoly or Risk. Like, man, I could give you 50 game recommendations that will do what those games do better, But really, if you enjoy that and you like it, and that's been, for whatever reason you have an attachment to that, like, cool, man, you play the heck out of Monopoly.
Right.
You put that $500 bill on free parking. I don't care. Do what you got to do.
right? And it's the difference between saying, "Oh, that's gross. Here, try this," and "Oh, you like that? You might also like this."
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's this real subtle way that you can still be like an enabler than a gatekeeper, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Ambassador.
about, about all that house ruling stuff about Monopoly and whatnot. Like people ask me that all the time. Like, do you get mad at people who house rule your games? It's like, as long as they don't rate the game based on their house rule, and as long as they tell people when they're teaching them that this is a house rule that they added, then I'm fine. Because what I really get upset about, not really, but I mean, kind of, sort of, it's like, oh, I didn't like the game. Well, how'd you play it? Well, this way. Well, that's not the way I intended you to play it. So, I mean, I don't know if you really gave it a fair shot.
There's
But
an
at the end, I'm
asterisk-
not really that
asterisk
upset.
on that rating.
Yeah, right. That's exactly
this
what
probably will irritate you a little bit as a board game designer, but I really don't like reading rule books. I don't enjoy it.
That's okay. I don't like writing them. So there you go.
Yeah. So like,
We're the flip side of the same coin, my friend.
Like YouTube is a godsend for me in that sense, especially like
Rodney Smith,
on his
what's
name.
up?
Rodney Smith, yeah, Rodney Smith's videos.
Another great
are like,
Canadian.
Yeah, so
you guys
like,
keep it real up there.
Those videos give me life because I get to see the rules in action. You know, like that's so much more helpful for me than reading them. But anyway, because of that, occasionally like I'll miss the finer point of a rule because I didn't really like read the rule book. I just watched a video and something was, not covered or whatever. And so it's not uncommon for me to discover after playing a game several times that something doesn't work the way I thought it did.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh man, this game is so much better than I thought it was.
We've all been there.
Oh, for sure. It's hilarious. One of my design partners, Jesse Wright, who I'm working on Kingdom Rush with right now, and his partner, Helena, when we first met, they were like, oh, I'm big fans of Belfort, blah, 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 blah. And I said, great. Yeah, let's get together sometime and play. And we did. And Jesse's doing all this stuff wrong. And then it's like, Jess, that's not how you play. Oh my God, that's not how you play. No, not really. And then Helena's like, that's why you win every time. You just do that to win. And it's hilarious because he doesn't do it to win, but his interpretation of the rules allowed him to win more than she did. So now she feels all vindicated. It's quite funny. She's given asterisks to all of his wins in that game ever.
It's like a running joke
helpful.
with me and people I play games with. There's just a phrase that they like to say to me, which is would have been nice to know. Because usually what happens is I'll miss, kind of like Drew, like I miss a detail or a ruling or something like that. And I don't remember it or I don't figure it out or see it until like, an hour into the game, hour and a half into the game. And usually, and I swear this is purely coincidental, it's something that benefits me.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's just kind of the running.
I have also been
meme
accused of
in
that.
my group of,
I don't necessarily think I did it.
Yeah.
But I've definitely been accused of it. Like I'm pretty
say
sure
we're
I told
innocent
you.
until proven guilty, Sen.
Pretty sure I told you.
I've definitely been one of the people that has said it would have been nice to know to you, Chris.
Yeah.
But I will say I would rather that happen than have to sit down and learn every rule of a game before we start playing. Like that's definitely worse. I don't want to spend an hour on the rules before we jump into the game. That's probably my biggest board game pet peeve.
Yeah,
we played
actually
On Mars the other day.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you guys have played that.
Not yet.
Holy crap! That is. I played some complicated games. Like those are kind of my TI Twilight Imperium is like one of my favorite games ever. And man, On Mars is a beast to learn. I think we were learning that for an hour and 45 minutes, just learning it, setting it up, all that stuff.
we made this mistake of starting like Gaia Project at like some time where we were like, oh, we have a panel in like 3 hours.
No.
Oh, do you think we can fit Gaia Project in? And they're like, yeah, let's give it a try. And we're like halfway through the rules, and we're like, maybe we should have picked another game. But we did power through it, and then we just kind of stopped, like maybe 3 turns in or something, because it took a long time to get through it, and it was a loud room, and cons are not the best place to necessarily learn a new heavy game. It like at like prime time con time when it's like loud in the
I have
room.
a hard time learning that lesson though.
Yeah. I love, man.
I totally agree.
I miss cons. Do you miss going to conventions?
I do and I don't. I'm not I'm not an extrovert by nature. I'm an extrovert by force, and so things like that tire me out incredibly. Like I go to a con and then I have to sleep for a week type thing. Like, and it's not just con drop. It's like, no, I have literally no energy. But while I'm there, I am definitely vibing off everybody's energy, and I love it, and I like seeing people and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, cons is where I do a lot of work, so I do enjoy that part of it. I enjoy traveling. I like seeing new places, eating fun food, and you know, game people are the best people. So definitely miss them. Are we getting back to them? I hope soon someday, when everything's safe. And even after everything's pretty okay, I may be a little bit reticent to travel still, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But I do miss them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
me too.
online cons just haven't
It's not even
met
close
the need.
to the same. Yeah. It's just not.
I think there's a lot of good stuff that's come out of it though, but
it's kind of where I'm at with like solo board games, or even now like trying to do online board games. It actually just makes me more sad that I can't do that in person. It's like when I'm playing a solo game, I'm just constantly reminded the whole time, this would be funner with other people. This would be more fun with other people. And when I'm playing like Tabletop Simulator or something like that, I'm like, this would just be more fun and take less time in person. And so I've just completely avoided both things now.
Yeah, I'm not a solo gamer at all. I don't play games to play the game. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I play games to have an experience, and usually other people are part of that experience.
Yeah.
It's this sort of thing where, like I don't necessarily like what like flips my switch isn't figuring out the intricacies of the game, because that's not that hard for me. It's more seeing other people do fun stuff, and being part of that is what I like about gaming. Sometimes I'm the one doing the cool stuff. Sometimes other people are doing the cool stuff, but it's being part of that experience, which is, I mean, why I like role-playing games a lot, because, you get to watch people do fun and cool things, and escape rooms are like that as well. Board games are a little bit different, but yeah, I'm not necessarily into board gaming for the mechanics of the actual game. I mean, I love all that. I do.
Because
like, I
there
think
are
about it day and
definitely
night.
people that are like that. I mean, I
Oh,
think
for sure, 100%.
that's kind of the Euro game, right? Like where it's just head down, do your own thing. You don't even need to worry about really other people at the table. Like you just score all your points,
And I'm not against that at all. I don't mind playing those games as long as there's other people there. I just find them very dry, for lack of a better word, when there's nobody else there to talk to or to kibitz with or to like taunt, or play those games with the social games, right? And this is not to say like I'm on a big Ameri gaming or anything like that. Like big random swings of dice aren't also my thing. It's not either of those. None of those things are my thing about games. My thing about games are the people that play them, and I like to be around a table with those people. I know, like, I definitely have friends who are like, yeah, solo games. And I find it actually difficult to design solo games because I don't like them the same way that other people like them. And so I do a lot of market research when I do design solos. It's like, what do you like about solos? And tell me about that solo. What did you like? And so I've joined all these groups about solo gaming. It's helping. It's just not my forte.
Yeah.
So, I always suggest to like people who hire me for publishing, it's like, okay, yeah, if you want a solo mode, you may want to, hire somebody on or bring one of my friends on or something like that to do it, because they will do a much better job than I will. And that's not me trying to get somebody else in the door. That's me saying, if you want that,
you're just being honest.
You need to do something about that, because what I'm giving you is a 2 to 4 player game or whatever, right? And luckily, I do co-design with lots of people who are better at solo games than I am. So we usually have one kind of in the pocket anyway. But
What up, my nerds? We here at Love Thy Nerd are beyond honored that you let our podcast blast in your earbuds each week. But we're also a jealous ministry who wants even more of your love and devotion. If you haven't made LTN Radio a part of your daily routine yet, you are missing out. Not only do you get to hear our exclusive morning shows, Church Nerds and the Back Row Morning Show, before they are put on the website, but you also get radio exclusive shows like Bible Thump with Drew Dixon, LTN Rewind, Faith and Fandom 180 with Hector Mirai, The Moment with Megan Mo Oaks, Nerd History, Nerdy Definitions, This Week in Nerdy News, and our LTN specials as well. And on top of all that, the rest of our airtime is jam-packed with the absolute best mix of Christian rock, rap, pop, and indie that is hand-curated by Love Thy Nerd just for you. Give us a listen at ltnonair.com or download the Live 365 app on your smartphone to search and favorite LTN Radio. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, we do like to kind of like also hear about you, who you are as a person, what makes you tick. Kind of like to get personal on this podcast. So yeah, where did you grow up, and what was that like?
Grew up in Northern Ontario, so in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which is connected to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, by the International Bridge at the hub of the Great Lakes. So right where Superior meets all the other lakes. Superior, by the way, is a ginormous lake. If you've never seen Lake Superior, it is ridiculous.
Well named.
Yes.
Superior to all lakes.
It kind of is. Lake Gitchagumi. Anyway, so I grew up there.
It up right now to see how big it is.
It is ginormous.
Man, yeah.
I think that's a technical term, ginormous.
I pretty much think it is too. And so I grew up there, lonely Asian boy, one of only like maybe 12, 15 Asian people in that city. Wow. Or kids anyways. I mean, they all had parents, right? Yeah. But so it's a small steel town, steel and pulp. So we make paper and we make steel, so raw material conversion. You can find us actually on many railway games because Sault Ste. Marie was a big hub for rail because it's like one of the only stops up there. There's not a lot. So when I grew up, the closest town of any size is like 4 hours away, right? So it's
what was that?
Sudbury.
Okay.
And then
I see it on the map here.
Thunder Bay.
You know Sudbury, Drew?
Gosh, that's 4 hours.
Yeah,
so like I think of
spread
when
out.
you think of Ontario, like any probably American, this is what comes to mind is Toronto, right?
Yeah.
You're not looking at this map, like you're not anywhere close to
Toronto.
Is like a 8-hour drive or
Toronto
something?
is 8 hours away by the Canadian route and like 11 hours away by the American route. Yeah, but there are places in Canada that are closer by going through America. So if I was to go to Windsor, it'd be faster for me to go through the UP, which if you hold your hand up, sorry, just get a little Michigan.
Oh yeah, that's a little Michigan. Yeah.
Thunder Bay is another 8 hours to the west and stuff like that. So it takes you like, let me just think, 8, 4, 8, 6. Yeah, it's like a almost a day to drive across the province from the east to the west or the west to the east, whichever way you want to go.
You call it the Yoopers.
Yeah,
right?
Michigan for sure.
The upper peninsula is the Yoopers.
The Yoopers, yeah. But now I live in southern Ontario, so I actually live closer to technically not really closer to Michigan, but I'm about like 3 hours away from Detroit now.
Okay.
Like 2 hours south of Toronto, 3 hours away from Detroit, roughly.
So I'm guessing it was pretty like wasn't a whole lot going on in your hometown growing up and stuff.
Not a lot. A lot of metalheads, I mean, I grew up cycling into the mountains and skiing to school and stuff like that. Yeah. 6 foot high.
Skiing to school?
Yeah. There'd be days
like cross country skiing.
Yeah, there'd be days when I'd have to cross country ski to school. The snow mounds in my city in Sault Ste. Marie would be 6 to 8 foot high. That's not like in a parking lot. That's like on my street in front of my house.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of snow. right? You got lake effect, plus you're pretty far north, and it's like, and that isn't even literally that far north. Like I've been further.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my friend Jesse, a co-designer, he's actually in the Northwest Territories right now. He moved up to the Northwest Territories to take a job, and like that's like 3,000 kilometers further
dude.
North and west of me.
Off
So
the grid.
yeah, quite literally. He was walking around the other day in sealskin, like wearing sealskins, like literally. 'Cause you have to,
As one does.
as one does. Or you're going to die. And it was like minus 50 centigrade, not Fahrenheit, centigrade.
Wow.
It's like super cold up there.
That's intense.
That was with the wind chill, but still, it was minus 40 without wind chill, which is
Meanwhile,
actually,
it's
I think,
like,
minus 40 centigrade in
It's like
Fahrenheit.
60 Fahrenheit here, and I have a hoodie, sweatpants,
I saw the
slippers,
hoodie.
and a blanket on.
I saw the hoodie when
Yeah.
when we had our cameras on. So yeah, I grew up way up north, and it wasn't until I got down south that I really more found out more about who I was. But I still was able to get gaming in. So my parents, I was a precocious kid. Like definitely a handful in terms of I didn't know what to do with myself, because I just devoured things. Like I was done reading The Lord of the Rings by the time I was 6, type thing.
Wow.
And my parents,
I can't even read that at 34 years old. It's way too dense.
So my mom, I don't know how my mom knew all this stuff, but my mom had heard about this thing called Dungeons and Dragons, and I was born in the 70s, so 72. So Dungeons and Dragons was like this thing, and amazingly enough, my mom is a devout Roman Catholic. She put me in this before the whole satanic panic thing. And I was in the basement of the University of Algoma University, playing role-playing games with like 18-year-old people, 19, 20-year-old people when I was 6.
And you were how old? Oh, when you were
6.
6. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that got me on the path to what I'm doing now, which is game design for parts of it anyways, right? So it was a lifelong love affair with role-playing games, and in between, waiting for people to get there and stuff, we'd play all these kind of what we called at the time beer and pretzel games, although I didn't know what beer was, so because I was 6. But there was like, Avalon Hill games and Steve Jackson games and all those ones that are from the 70s and 80s. So we played a lot of Car Wars and a lot of Titan, Avalon Hill's Titan, just games like that. The very first like Whiz Wars and things were from then. Tom Wham and all that kind of
It's
stuff.
not what it sounds like, listeners. Okay.
Yeah. And
we had different kind of whiz words when I was a kid.
Oh, you guys are weird.
Yeah.
And
We've already learned that about Drew on this podcast for sure.
Sorry.
Backyard wrestling and Whiz War. Awesome. And we would and so I just grew up playing all those games, and that just really informed how I looked at the world, I guess. One of my friends, like 2 years ago, we just kind of reconnected on Facebook, and he said, "Hey, do you remember that game you made when we were kids and it looked like this?" And I said, "Oh my God, yeah. It was this 3-level, like literally like 3-tiered Star Trek kind of board with underwater, on the surface of the water, and air combat all at the same time in this 3-dimensional board." And it's like, yeah, I do remember that. He goes, I said, how did you remember that? Because I loved that thing. So yeah, and I was the kid who
dig it up and polish it.
Just go get that Star Trek license. Go get it.
I don't know where it is anymore. We'll find out. But yeah, I was that kind of kid who would convince the teacher that I had to stay in at recess to play Dungeons and Dragons with the 3 other people that thought it was cool. That kind of thing. So yeah, I grew up in gaming, and always.
Were your folks supportive of that? Your parents?
God, no. They're like, that was our biggest mistake ever. So my parents,
that was going to be my question, like, because you said she got you into it before the Satanic Panic.
Yeah. And I don't think it was the Satanic. It really wasn't the Satanic Panic that made her regret anything. It was more so my parents are very much, as you can tell by my name, they are very, Chinese parents. To the point where it's like, this is stereotypical. Like, why did you not get an A+ when you get an A type of parents. That is literally what they're like. And my parents were always worried about me being a dabbler. I was a dabbler because I was really good at lots and lots and lots of
Jack
things.
of all trades, master of none.
Well, no, that's the thing. I mastered everything.
Oh, okay.
So
well,
like
even better. Great.
Like I'm a provincial level jiu-jitsu fighter.
Okay.
That's how good I am at martial arts. You know, I'm a black belt and all that kind of stuff, and I've won provincial level championships. I don't do things that I'm bad at, and I do a lot of things. So it's really weird. I've sung professionally at the Canadian National Exhibition, which is like a fair that goes on in Toronto every summer. I did that for 2 summers. You know, it's just like, and they find it so weird that I can do all these things at a level where I get paid. I've DJ'd around the world. I've done all lots of stuff. But my parents were always so worried that I was a dabbler, dabbling. And so they took me when I was like, I don't know, 14 or 15 to a psychologist to get tested.
To fix you.
I don't know. I don't know what they thought would happen because I've been tested many times before that for gifted for gifted education, right? So I was always in pullout classes. I was at my homeschool like 3 days out of the week and at a different school 2 days out of the week type thing. And they just wanted me to focus on probably being a doctor is probably what they wanted me to focus on, which is very stereotypical, but it's true.
Wait, did your parents were doctors or what?
No,
did they
my
do?
mom's a nurse. My dad's an engineer, but they're both like highly educated and you know,
driven.
Very, very professional and always studying, always learning, always, you know, researching the new thing.
Not dabblers.
No, they were not dabblers. Well, so, cause I mean, in my adulthood, I kind of realized like they came up from a really harsh upbringing. Like they ran away across the South China Sea during the World War II. Like they learned to swim in bomb craters, that kind of thing, right? So it's just like these things that you could never imagine because you can't. Like
that gives you some perspective
exactly
on
right?
About 2020.
Your frustration that I'm sure that you experienced as a kid when you were like frustrated that they were upset at you for dabbling.
Yeah.
But then you realize what they went through and you're like, well, okay,
I didn't at the time.
Yeah,
right?
At the time, it's really hard.
It's that hindsight, right? They're just like, like they sacrificed so much so that you could dabble. And so, and it's funny because I mean, you know, I'm a psychology prof, and it's just hilarious to think about it all. Like we talk about, you know, how adolescents rebel almost invariably in Western culture because of how Western culture is set up. And then the thing that they do though, adolescents, is they'll rebel in terms of style and that kind of choice, like music choice and hair color and all those things, those superficial things. But 99% of children that rebel don't actually rebel against morals and ethics of parents. It's very rare that they do. And so my sister, who, you know, super rebel during her high school years, like my parents had to call the cops on her type rebel.
Wow.
She's a doctor. You know, in the end, she's a doctor. I'm a therapist, and my parents just don't understand it, right? Yeah. My parents just don't understand what I do, though. So they're hilarious. They for many years, my parents couldn't explain what I did for work, and so they wouldn't tell their friends what I did. Yeah. I asked them, so what do you tell them about me? Because they'd come and say, oh, you know, your friend Aaron, he's a chiropractor, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so what do you tell people about me? They say, oh, we don't tell them about, because we don't understand what you do. I'm a therapist, Mom. That's
I've had those same conversations with my parents.
It's so funny. Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
what's the hang up there like? About therapy? I'm curious.
Oh, so mental health is a big weird thing in Chinese culture.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of it. And I'm not even a mental health therapist per se. I'm an occupational therapist.
It's seen as like something you shouldn't have to do.
No, but it's seen as like weakness.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Gotcha.
Right. As opposed to an illness. And so, yeah, I mean, both my wife and I are therapists. So I guess that was a big stick in my parents' eye. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they just didn't get it. And so now that I'm back in school as a professor, like, oh, okay, we can talk about that. He's a teacher.
I
We
could say
get
the
that.
professor.
Yeah, that's
Do they
easier.
tell people about like your game designing stuff?
No, because I don't tell them about my game design. It's sad. It sounds sad, and it is in a way. Like I wish I could share that with them, but I just know that it would cause fights. Like my parents are very worried about how I spend my time. They're always worried about what you should be spending your time making money, or you should be spending time doing something. And it's like I couldn't even tell them like, oh yeah, I mean it does make money. They wouldn't care. It just doesn't make as much money as the other stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Parents are a trip, man.
they are, but when you look back at their existence and their like my mom. So when my parents moved from Sault Ste. Marie, they came to London, where I live now, because we had, another child coming. And my mom's like, oh, I want to be
London,
there.
Ontario.
Yeah, London, Ontario. So I want to be there for you, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay. We are, and I just got a job at a new clinic at the time, and my wife is pregnant, so she was still working in Hamilton. And I said, okay, I'm gonna move to London to do this job, and I'm gonna buy a house. And my dad said, oh, why don't you buy a second house for us next door to you? And I said, okay, but if I'm gonna do that, I'm just gonna buy one house, Dad. This is stupid. And that was even stupider. So his idea was probably smarter in the long run. But anyways, so long story short, my parents now live by themselves in a giant house by a golf course. That's what happened.
Wow.
So we actually had to move out. It's like, I'm at the time I was like, how old was I at the time? Like 38. I was like, I'm a 38-year-old man. I don't need you telling me when I can and cannot go to bed. That's it's just ridiculous. But the thing is, parents are always going to be parents, right? I have kids.
Yeah.
I will probably always be their parent. I don't want to be their friend. I love them and I'm friendly with them, but currently I don't want to be their friend. That's not my role. And so I get that, and I understand why my parents are like that. But in order to stop the fighting, it's like, I don't want to tell you about these things, because if I did, then it would just cause a fight, and now I'd resent you. And I'd rather celebrate with people who want to celebrate and just not celebrate that with you. And I'm okay. I can compartmentalize my life in that way, and I'm okay with that at some level. I'm sure I'm going to have like a very tearful eulogy at some point, because they're getting old, and that's just reality.
Yeah.
And it'll all come out then, and it'll be very difficult. But that's my choice now, is to not share that part of my life with them, because it would just cause turmoil and grief.
That's hard. Like, that's why I think, I made that comment, like parenting's a trip, because, you're making me like, you're dredging up all these feelings about my own parents. Cause I have a lot of that similar kind of thing where we just don't have certain conversations, because I just know kind of where they stand on it. I know where I stand on it. And it's just, that conversation is not going to go anywhere or be fruitful. But it also really bums me out. I was just having this conversation the other day about video games specifically, because video games, I was super nerdy and loved playing video games. My parents vehemently opposed to video games. And I just think about all the opportunities that we missed out on in bonding, when I was a kid, because they were so opposed to it, like for them to sit down and play a game with me, like all the interactions and things that we could have had. And I think about like going into my own, becoming a parent, like navigating those things, because certainly, and I mean, maybe the two of you can speak to this as parents, like certainly there's going to be things that your kids do that you just can't get behind or can't support or can't, like, how do you draw those lines? How do you still stay in good relationships so that, you don't get to a point where your kids don't want to share something with you because they know how you're going to react to it or whatever, like how do you keep those doors open? That's the stuff that just, man, that trips me out.
Yeah, it's hard.
Great question.
It is. It's
Sen.
I mean, so
just tell me the answer, guys.
My kids are 17 and 13, so they're getting up there.
Yeah.
And there's definitely things that they don't tell me that they'll tell their mom, and vice versa, because they know how we'll react, right? That's what personality is by definition, is just standard pattern of reaction to stimulus, right? That's what a personality is. It's genetically based. Like it's not a social construct. It's a genetic thing where I will react poorly to X because that's how I react to that thing. It's obviously it's shaped by your experiences, but you have kind of like a baseline genetic basis to that. Anyway, so my kids, I hope, will share stuff with us. They definitely have, as Ethan, my oldest, is getting to that age where he's moving out. He's definitely being more open with us about stuff, not like revealing secrets or anything, just like questions and things like that. And he's definitely like asking things about so how do I do this and how do I do that. Now he's realizing, oh, you mean I got to learn how to cook? He cooked dinner last night. It was really late at 10 o'clock, but he cooked dinner.
Ethan.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a good start to
That's
things.
your oldest, or
that's my oldest. Actually,
Okay,
honestly, my
nice.
13-year-old used to love to cook. I don't know why he doesn't anymore, but he used to love to cook. So he would cook dinner all the time. But my 17-year-old, like it was like mac and cheese was his thing, as far as it gets. But now he's like, last night he made like butter chicken, and he's learning how to use all of the utensils and stuff like that. But it's still frustrating, sometimes it's like, Ethan, why aren't you listening to me? Just listen to what I'm telling you and do what I say, and it'll get done. Like how do I chop this? Well, you dice it. Okay, well, how do I dice it? Okay, chop into squares. Okay, well, how do I do that? He's like, and I said, well, Ethan, you just chop it into squares. And he's like, Dad, I've never done this before. I said, well, would you like me to show you? Yes. Okay. So it's not easy, even with like the silliest little things like that. And I think one of the things is going into everything, and it's hard when you're tired or when you're overworked or when it's the end of the day to do that. Because I'm sure like I didn't look super happy when he was talking to me. It's like, just cut the damn stuff into blocks, kid. But part of it is grace, right? Going into it with grace and going into it with the understanding that, and this is something I actually learned from my students, that if somebody's asking for help, they probably need it. Otherwise they wouldn't ask, because for a lot of those people, especially my students, to ask a professor for help, that's a lot of effort. Like it's literally like killing them to ask me for help. Because I don't know why, but the perceived power differential, right? So if people ask you for help, maybe just give it to them graciously. And I'm not great at that. I was not great at that. And I learned from just kind of understanding that, oh, this is not about me. This is about you, right? And the problem is that when I get tired, or when it's like the end of the day, like 10 o'clock, when he's making dinner at 10 o'clock, it's like, it's the end of the day. Why? Just let me do this or whatever. Like you get a little short, and we all make mistakes. And it's funny because I'm actually like a literal expert in parenting, and I make mistakes all the time. Like it happens all the time. Yeah. But it is that sort of like, take a breath, go with grace, ask yourself, why are they asking me this question? Is it a challenge to my authority, or is it a rational question that deserves a rational answer? That is literally how you diffuse a crisis, right? Is like, if it's rational, you give them a rational answer, and you probably will diffuse the crisis because that's what they're looking for. So that's at least one answer, one way to look at it. There's obviously nuance to everything, but there you go. Yeah. There's your parenting advice for the day.
We solved it.
You just simplified parenting for me quite a bit there.
I mean, I hope it did something.
It's Mo from the Back Row Morning Show, and I've got 5 random facts for you. The world's longest French fry is 34 inches long. Naval tradition declares submarines be called boats, not ships. Walt Disney started sketching regularly when he was just 4 years old. Cherries are a member of the rose family, as are pears, plums, apples, and raspberries. There are ice caves in Iceland that have hot springs. And 1 teaspoon of a neutron star would weigh 6 billion tons.
That was 6 facts.
It was 6 facts.
You get a bonus fact on your bonus facts. Yo, this is Exhibit, and we heard you like facts, so we put a bonus fact on your bonus facts.
For more fun facts and hilarious nonsense, tune in to the Back Row Morning Show Monday through Thursday at 7 a.m. and again at 9 a.m. Central here on LTN Radio.
I definitely can relate to the when I'm tired, it's the end of the day. Like, yeah, for sure. And then my daughter will borrow my wife's phone sometimes. When my oldest, she's 9, and she'll borrow my wife's phone sometimes to listen to stories like books on tape when she goes to sleep and stuff. Books on tape.
Books on tape.
I can't believe I used that term.
I do. I say,
You know what I
we're going
mean?
to put that on
Oh
tape or we're
my
going to videotape
gosh.
that. It's like, no, we're not
You need to
taping
strike
anything.
that from the record.
Just dated myself there.
Yikes.
But yeah, so she'll text me from my wife's phone while she's listening to these stories, and it's like after bedtime, lights out, but we let her listen to this
Sure.
to books and stuff. And she'll be like, "Dad, can you give me some water?" And I'll be like, "Evelyn, you are capable of getting water."
Right?
And she'll say, "But I'm tired, please."
Yep. Yep.
It's this whole thing. And then she's like, and then if I don't text right back, she'll like send me these like sad emojis and stuff. And she's like, "Dad, are you even listening to me?"
Do you even love me? You're my daughter.
Yeah. She's very emotionally intelligent. So she knows like how to work it sometimes. But she also like that's a really like beautiful quality too, because she's very empathetic and very kind. So it's been trying to learn how to like navigate life with a very I think far more emotionally intelligent than me. And I'm kind of a sensitive person in a lot of ways, but she's
That
at
backyard
another
wrestling
level.
made you real sensitive.
Yeah, totally. You get it.
I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I mean, emotional intelligence is something that I honestly do not have a lot of. And I'm gaining it as I get older. Like it'll come to everybody. I think in like society wise, it does come to most guys later. I don't know why that is. I mean, I do have ideas. I have suppositions about that, but there's definitely a part of culture that in Western culture anyways, that makes guys not have to be that way in some ways. Right. So that's a question. But then, I mean, the other thing is trying to make sure that somebody who is emotionally intelligent and emotionally sensitive doesn't have that A used against them, and B doesn't use that against other people, right? So, I mean, a lot of the things that we look at as gifts are like very much double-edged swords, and that's what parents are for, right? Parents are there to nurture their children to make sure that they use their powers for good instead of evil and whatnot. Because
that's a good word.
If you're really looking at emotional intelligence, it is a superpower. It really is, right? And some people are really good at it, and some people are oblivious to it, and most people are somewhere in between. But that type of emotional empathy and resonance with other people can be useful, but it can also be weaponized for and against, right? So it's just something to be very aware of. That if you have that super sensitive daughter, and somebody else notes that they're super sensitive, that's a bully, that's a problem, right? It could turn into a problem. Or if because they're so emotionally sensitive, they know how to pick away at people's emotions, that could also be a problem because they could turn into a bully. So
yeah, for sure. I remember one time, this is like one of my favorite stories about my daughter, but my oldest daughter that I was telling you about. My youngest daughter was going through this phase that I think a lot of...
Oh, so she's not your only daughter. She doesn't have that excuse.
No.
Okay,
no,
so
she doesn't.
She could go without water then. You have another daughter. I see.
Yeah. My youngest daughter, who's my middle child, we have a boy who's 3 now. But my middle child was, I guess she was probably like 2 or 3, probably 3. And she was going through this phase of, I want mommy for everything. It was driving my wife it was stressing her out for sure. And so I was trying to like make sure she lets me help her with things, to not like, like it was just trying to help. And so that, I would keep after her. Like I'd try to comfort her when she was upset and things, just to like, hey, we gotta press through this because it's going to wear my wife out. So I was trying to comfort her one time when she got really upset, and she got really mad. I don't want, and she was just like like yelling, "I don't want you, daddy. I don't want you, daddy. I don't want you." And like this was after a long like kind of, you know, battle over this issue. And I was trying to be objective about it and not like let it get under my skin, you know? But it finally just like broke me. And I just went into my room, closed the door, and just like started weeping uh on in my room and on the bed. Like
Mhm.
it was just like emotionally spent, you know? I finally like did take it really personally. And my oldest child, she was 5 or 6 at the time, and she came in, opened the door, saw me crying, and came and laid down next to me and hugged me and said, "I want you, daddy."
Aw.
Just, oh my
It
gosh, I
broke
cried
down
even
even
harder.
more, right?
Yeah, and I was just like, that's just, it was such a like
It is hard, right?
empathetic,
Yeah.
like very kind gesture
Mhm.
that just, you know,
So
like it's
she's on the
exactly what I needed.
she's on the path to good. That's a good sign.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a challenge, like trying to help her with exactly what you're talking about, like using her emotional superpowers for good and not to manipulate people or,
Yeah, and then
you
there's
know.
the other part of it is understanding, some of the deep emotions that she feels. Like, she may understand them, but she might not be able to rationalize them, if you get the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna
Yeah.
be some like, "Why do I feel this way? And I don't understand why I feel this way." Which is, I mean, to kinda go full circle back to the idea of gifted and talented education, a lot of kids who are gifted in other ways, like, they don't have the emotional maturity, they have the intellectual maturity, and so
Mm-hmm.
they are kind of, unfortunately, they get messed up in different ways, right? Where, you know, they
Yeah.
understand, like, things like death, and they understand way before other kids do, and they understand things like, atrocities and whatnot, and the
Mm-hmm.
history of that kind of stuff, and they don't understand why they feel like they feel, and they can't deal with the feelings, but they understand cognitively, rationally what is happening. And so that's also the other kind of danger that we see on the flip side of that, where these children who have these, abilities, again, you just can't say, oh, well, they're gifted in that area. They'll just be better than everybody. It's like, no, wait a minute. They are a little child with
Yeah.
in like 9 or 10 years old with, the capacity in one area or another of like a 16, 17, 18, 20-year-old person.
Mm-hmm.
That's atypical, and that's not something that our school systems are really set out for, and it does require specialized training to deal with a lot of the
Yeah.
issues that happen in, kids. Like, you'll see all those memes, like, if you if you were doing this at 12, you are now, an out of work wannabe author or something like that, right? Stuff like, and it's like all the people who are like, "Yep, I was in gifted class, and that's exactly me," right? Because a lot of
Mm.
times those that metric of giftedness isn't necessarily a predictor of better outcomes. There's all this
Yeah.
other stuff that has to go into place to nurture, again, that student into reaching their full potential of what they can
Mm.
be, right? And
Yeah.
that is
Definitely.
kind of what shows you the difference between, uh, in psych we call it a reaction range for IQ, where everybody has a set range for their IQ, and it's definitely, we think right now anyways, genetic. That, my IQ, because I'm of this genetic stock, should be
Mm-hmm.
between X and Y. But where you end up on that spectrum between X and Y depends on your environment and the nurturing that your parents do and what they can provide, and your, education, and your health, and, the food you eat, and,
Right.
where you live, and all this kind of stuff. So it's called the reaction range because there's a range, and it's in reaction
Mm-hmm.
to all the rest of the stuff that's happening around you. And so it just really does show you that, left to your own devices, you cannot predict the best outcomes for any kid who has, a gift or a talent.
Mm.
The easier way to do it is look at sports, and you see, oh, that kid who was super talented as a high school athlete, and, is now doing nothing. They could have done so
Yeah.
much. Well, they weren't nurtured to do more, right? They weren't. They may have been so much emphasis was put on the sports that they didn't shore up some of the other things, or they didn't feel like they had to be emotionally, gifted, or not gifted, even just emotionally on par, because they were so physically gifted, and they, everybody told them they were the best, they're the greatest. And then when stuff doesn't go their way, what do? They, seek solace in a bottle, or they abuse people or whatever. And so these stories that keep on playing themselves over and over again in society, you kind of got to look at them and say, well, why? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Where are we failing these children who could be something so great someday? And this is all children. So there are definitely people who are like, well, all children have gifts. It's like, yes, but you don't understand that children who are extremely gifted and talented in certain areas have a different mindset.
Yep.
Because
they have different struggles and things too that you have to weigh in for sure. Yeah, that's good. We should have you on for a whole nother thing where we talk about child psychology or something.
Yeah, we could do that. That's fine.
Dude, he's gonna invoice us for this podcast.
No.
A therapy session.
No.
Sorry, the plumber was here.
Great.
Yeah,
no worries, man.
That's the kind of therapy you need, is the plumber therapy.
Yeah, you need to finally be able to use your toilet, No, but we're about out of time here. We don't want to take more time than we scheduled with you here, but this was great. Really enjoyed kind of hearing a little bit about your story, and we were working in the games industry, and this was really fun. You're super super easy to talk to, which I always enjoy. So thanks so much, Sen, for coming on. Where would you point people to if they kind of want to follow what you're up to?
Twitter's probably the best place. So at Sen-Foong Lim, SenFoongLim on Twitter.
Great, man. Cool. Well, and you've got you're working right now on Kingdom Rush, is that right?
Yeah. So the
big project,
second part of Kingdom Rush, it's a standalone game. You don't need the first to play the second. It's Elemental Uprising, and that's on GameFound right now. That's by myself, Jesse Wright, and Helena Hope.
Awesome, man. We'll be
and
looking
that'll
forward
probably,
to seeing that.
I think the Kickstart. Sorry, you can't call things on GameFound a Kickstarter. So that'll be finished probably
this
by the
week.
time this episode releases.
Yeah, so probably.
But can people still get in on that after the fact?
I believe there's probably a late pledge manager. I mean, it's on GameFound, right? So there's probably a way to do something during that or after the fact. But I mean, just bit a buck and fill it in later. I think there's definitely a path to getting at least some of the stuff after, and obviously retail. Not everything will be going to retail, unfortunately. That's just the way people like to do things. And so if you want all of it, then you're going to have to look for a way to get that. And probably, I believe there'll be a pledge manager after the fact that'll allow you to do that.
Cool, man. We'll look forward to that. Well, thanks again, Sen.
Thanks a lot, Sen.
This was awesome.
No problem. Good talking to you.
Appreciate it.